Let's talk about dark spores and dark flowers and dark trees and digidestin that get infected with dark spores. Okay, so this video is going to be about the dark spore children, which are a certain group of children that Oikawa implants the dark spore into them, and then he intends to use them as just a means to an end. Technically, it's Myotismon that she wants to use them as a means to an end, but Oikawa is kind of the one that implements the plan. So, those of you who are familiar with Ken's backstory, as I mentioned, when he was about probably I'd say around 10-ish years old or so, or 8 to 9 years old, he went into the Digiworld, and him and Wormmon fought against this Digimon called Millenniummon. When Millenniummon was destroyed, he released a ton of these things that are called dark spores, and one of them got implanted in the back of Ken's neck. Then, over the course of the next several years, once Ken's brother unfortunately had died, was killed by a car, Ken fell into darkness, and it gave that seed the spark that it needed to grow. That growth then resulted in the dark spore growing and infecting Ken and slowly manipulating his mind and changing his probably like messing with his morality quite a bit, and increased his intelligence and increased his athletic ability, to the point where they were like at the peak of human perfection to a degree for the age of a 12-year-old in regards to the peak physical conditions. And that spore is what made him, along with kind of the influence of Oikawa, with kind of the probing and prodding and pushing along of Oikawa, was able to make Ken turn into the Digimon Emperor. After Ken was basically knocked back into reality by the other Digidestined, he then of course became a member of Davis's group, and helped destroy all of the tried to take down a ton of the control spires and everything, fought against Arukenimon, Mummymon, and the dog is barking in the background, probably at another dog. But what ends up happening is, of course, Ken becomes embraces his destiny as a Digidestined and everything, and works with Davis and the others. Then, when they're off on the Digimon World Tour, while they're off, jaunting and globe hopping and everything, and meeting all these other Digidestined and sending, Digimon back to the digital world and everything, Oikawa, Arukenimon, and Mummymon decide that it's time to start basically kidnapping children. Yeah. Yeah. What ends up happening is they go about and they find all of these different children that seem to be very lonely. Maybe don't have too many friends, are a bit more awkward, wish they could do better in school. Kids that, they have something that they can feed on, something that they can kind of, oh, well, if you would like to, we could always, we know a way of being able to make you stronger, smarter, better, a superior being. And they gather up, I think it's a group of about 20 children. We really only learn the names of a few of them. But there's a boy that sits on a swing that, Mummymon becomes friends with. There's, a girl who seems to, be wearing a mask because she's kind of, I'm guessing sick or something like that, or has a cold or something. And, Arukenimon kind of goes after her. And then there's another little girl that's there's a boy, I think, that was on a bridge at one point, and, Mummymon, I think, goes after him. And they individually gather up these kids with the thing of, oh, we have a way of making you better. You remember that boy, Kenichi Joji? Yeah, well, we know how to make you smart and popular and everything the way that he was. We have something that can help with that. And all of these children kind of run away, and they go and they go and they and they go and they go and they go, and they run away and they join Arukenimon and Mummymon and Oikawa. When Davis and the others return from the Digimon World Tour, they're jaunting all over the globe. Once they return, they hear these reports of kids going missing. And Ken becomes very concerned about this. And him and the other Digidestin go and they end up coming across this van that just like pulls up to them randomly or whatever. It's not randomly. Out pops Oikawa and our Kennymon and Mummymon are there. And they open the back door and they reveal, we have all of these children in here. These are all of the missing children. They're not missing. They came to be with us of their own free will. And we would like Ken to come with us. And if he comes with us, none of these children will get hurt. It's basically like, oh, we have hostages. You're Digidestin. You're supposed to do what's right. So you don't want any of these kids to get hurt. Therefore, come with us and none of them will get hurt. And Ken, of course, because he doesn't want the kids to get hurt, he goes with Oikawa into the van. And then this results in a chase between Davis and the van. And like Joe's brother Jim is the one driving Davis around and everything. Like this also is during the same time that they're having to deal with Daemon and his Digimon, which Daemon are going to get. Daemon, I'm planning on giving Daemon and the Daemon cores their own video to a degree, because they're kind of an interesting one to talk about a little bit. But what ends up happening is, so they're trying to chase the van around, and our Kennymon and Mummymon are driving, and Oikawa was in the back trying to talk with Ken and trying to say, did you ever want to know why you got all that intelligence and that, that charm and that athletic ability and everything? It came from the dark spore that's embedded in your neck. It was supposed to be it was supposed to infect this other kid, but you're the one that got it instead. But you became a pretty malleable thing that I could mess with. And that dark spore grew, and it helped make you into what you were as the Digimon Emperor. It also made you extremely intelligent and extremely, suave and charming and extremely strong. A superior being. These kids just want to have that same opportunity. They want to be able to be superior beings too. And what he does is he basically takes, for all intents and purposes, what looks like a barcode scanner from like a grocery store in like the early 2000s, and he scans the back of Ken's neck and is able to, I guess, make a copy or a nearly perfect copy of the dark spores, of the dark spore that's still inside of Ken. Because even though Ken knocked himself out, with the other Digidestin and Davis and his group were able to knock Ken out of the Digimon Emperor mindset, that dark spore is still inside of him because there's not really any way of like getting rid of it. And Ken also has this connection to the Dark Ocean, and the Dark Ocean is going to get its own video at some point. But what ends up happening is, of course, Oikawa, then, eventually the van stops, and, they let Ken go, and they they implant basically copies of of the Dark Spore into the necks of all of these children. And what ends up happening is, these kids then, they're, let's put it this way. I was not the popular kid in school by any means. I did not have a ton of friends, but I had friends that I cared about, and I had friends that cared about me. Yeah, we're really not in touch anymore, but, beyond like Facebook and stuff like that. But, there's not really, it's okay. But I never thought about like I want to have like a dark spore like what Ken had. Like, when I was growing up and going through that same age group, I'm like, having a dark spore that could make me super smart and super athletic would have been great. The downside is that it kind of takes away any other emotions that you have. It kind of makes you it's like it enhances it can make you even angrier at times if something happens, but it doesn't really, it doesn't enhance like your empathy gene or your emotions that involve happiness for the most part, unless that happiness is a result of, oh, I proved that I was better than someone else. I proved that I was better than everyone else. And, so it's that type of a thing. And it feeds on this, the dark spores are supposed to feed on this darkness and grow, and they're supposed to grow into dark flowers. That comes down the line a little bit later. But what ends up happening is, Oikawa, quote unquote, freeze the children, and like the police show up, and like he tells the kids, you'll receive a signal and you'll come back and we'll meet together, somewhere else in the near future type of a thing. And then he goes, and him and Arukenimon vanish, and they like go into hiding for a couple of weeks or a week or something like that. And the kids all get taken back to their parents' houses and everything, back to their homes. And, they start showing signs of the dark spores activating. They're able to do their homework faster and more efficiently and have better scores on it. All this other stuff, they're able to just like, it instantly starts to increase on that because they're feeding the dark spore, and they're actually, consciously feeding the dark spore, unlike Ken, who was not Ken was not intending to do that. He didn't know that the dark spore was there. It just happened to be there. And it grew and it grew and it infected him more. These kids are actually feeding that to happen. Like I will be better. I will be, more confident. I will be, all of this stuff. And what ends up happening is, each of these kids, we don't see every single one of them. We don't get like a flash of like all 20 kids, but we get a couple of them that are a little bit more, I guess, prominent to a degree. And those are Hiroshi, Shibata, Kiko, Kurata, Noriko, Kawada. I have the dog outside the door. 1 second. You want to come inside? You come in. Up on the bed. Up. Get up. He's like, my eyes. Come on, up. Come on, up. Here we go. We got a puppy. We has puppy. Hey, don't do that. He actually gets to go to the groomer in a little while, so, I'll let him be in here and be in the video now, and then, he'll be prettier later. Not that you're not pretty. Oh. And then, the other children are, Takashi, Yoshizawa, and then, Yukio, Sasaki, and then, Horiko, Kakudo. I apologize for mispronouncing all of those names. I probably did. I apologize. And it's been a long time since I've heard the names either explicitly pronounced or what. Hey, stop that. You don't need to look at that. You're fine. And, so each of the kids, they start demonstrating, being smarter, being faster, being, stronger and stuff like that. Mostly it just starts to, show that they're getting smarter. And some of the parents are like, oh, well, maybe we have a prodigy on our hands, like that Kenichi Joji boy. And because it's like, since he no longer was the Digimon Emperor, and since he stopped, feeding that darkness inside of him, Ken has gotten so much better. And actually, and his intelligence level technically dropped because he doesn't have the dark spore increasing it. Stop that. You don't need to lick, you're fine. And what ends up happening is, the Digidestin, Davis and his group, and like Ty and the older kids are helping too. They're like, okay, well, we need to find a way to help these kids because they're just going to be turned into tools by Oikawa. So they start keeping an eye on all the different kids. And one of the things that happens is one of the girls, Noriko, this girl, the girl that Arukenimon kind of became friends with, her spore actually grows a little bit faster than the other ones do. And what ends up happening is, Oikawa makes the copy and she goes back to her house after she gets an implanted in her. Did you try to eat your own foot again? Yeah, you're cute. That doesn't mean you need to eat your own foot. And what ends up happening is she actually ends up like lashing out at her mom a bit soon, she lashes out at her mom at one point because um her mom is just like trying to, like, I don't remember exactly what it is, but like her mom's just trying to be nice and everything, and then she just like snaps back at her mom going, just leave me alone, type of a thing. And her mother then, her mother kind of, backs off and leaves her alone and everything. And we notice on the back of her neck that there looks to be like a little bit of a barcode that appears. And we see on the back of her neck that whenever she starts, that whenever kind of her anger increases, and I think we see this a little bit with some of the other kids, whenever they're like actively feeding the spore, it, the mark on their neck, on the back of their neck kind of glows. So a lot of them are wearing, scarves, or they're wearing like shirts that have like higher collars, or if they have like long hair that covers it anyway. But she, kind of starts, lashing out at her mother more. And what ends up happening is she ends up getting followed by, I don't remember if she gets followed by Ken or if she gets followed by Cody, but she gets followed by Ken at least once. And she actually kind of confronts Ken, and she's like, well, you had all of this already. You had this intelligence and everything else, and you gave it up, and yet you're the one that has a Digimon and friends, and you're a Digi-destined and everything, and yet you don't want the rest of us to be able to have that. And of course, that's not what Ken wants at all. Ken would be perfectly fine if everybody in the world had a Digimon. It's just he doesn't want these kids to succumb to the same darkness that turned him into the Digimon Emperor, that made him torture Digimon and made him, lose Wormmon in the process. And what ends up happening is she just kind of, gets, very angry at Ken and everything. And, she says something very cruel to him. And one of the things that she says something very cruel to him at various points. And then one of the things that happens is there's this little cat that comes by, and like it was licking her shoe, and she actually kicks the cat. And to, similar to the way that Ken did, when he would like kick away Wormmon when he was the Digimon Emperor. And Cody kind of sees this, and Cody and TK kind of watch her at one point too. And Cody thinks that it's just kind of useless to, oh, you're fine. And Cody thinks that it's kind of useless to even talk to the girl, but TK still attempts anyway. And what ends up happening is apparently her dark spore is developing faster than the others. Noriko's dark spore is developing faster than the others, and Oikawa senses this, and he comes along, and like him and Mummymon or Kennymon are there, and Cody and TK are there, and Noriko, like, she kind of got very angry at Cody for whatever reason, insert reason why she got angry at Cody, and Davis is, I think, there too, and what ends up happening is she, like, the dark spore just kind of like very much activates inside of her, and like she starts glowing, like giving off this red aura, or around her head starts giving off this red aura, and out of her head, so first of all, she's actually seems to be in a fair amount of pain because she's like grasping her head and like screaming, and Oikawa shows up, and he explains that, oh, this one's growing faster than the others. Her dark spore is already turning into a dark flower for me to, cultivate. And out of her head grows this flower. Now, in Japanese culture, I'm sure this flower has a much bigger significance than what it does here. I see it as a pretty flower. I'm pretty sure that it actually means something along the lines of like death or mourning or something like that in Japanese. I could be wrong. And if that's what it is, then that's what it is. And if it's not, then I apologize. It could just be a flower design they came up with. But it looks similar to something I've seen before as represented as like a death lily or something like that. And I could be wrong. Flowers are not my expertise. But he, Cody and the others try to convince her to, no, don't go near him. Don't go near him. Stay away from him. And what ends up happening is, Mummymon and Kennymon kind of show up and kind of like, protect Oikawa, because, he's their master. And what ends up happening is Oikawa, Noriko doesn't care. She's like, no, I don't care what's going on here. This is cool and everything. She's kind of being, she's still being controlled to a degree by the Darkspore, being influenced by it more than anything. And Oikawa, like, he puts his hand over her head and he, like, sucks away the power from the dark flower, absorbs it, and it gives him, like, a power boost. And, like, he's surrounded in, like, this purple aura. And what ends up happening is Noriko kind of faints, and then he just, like, pushes Noriko away from him, like, towards Cody and the others. And this is when Cody's grandfather shows up, and then we have a whole confrontation between Cody's grandfather and Oikawa. But that was in the Cody video, and that'll be in the Oikawa video when I talk about that. That was also kind of in the Blackboard Greymon video as well. Or will be in the Blackboard Greymon video, depending on how this lands with the recording of that. But what ends up happening is then Oikawa and the other, Oikawa and Mamimon and Arukenimon disappear. Then what ends up happening is, like, Noriko kind of seems to become quite more, she's not catatonic or comatose or in a vegetative state or anything like that. She just seems to be much more robotic and very kind of weak at this point in time. And the next time we see the other Dark Spore children is when Oikawa gathers them together at the Heightened View Terrace Bridge. And what happens is he gathers them all together and they all start chanting, and he's going to use them as a way to open the gate to the digital world. He does not know that the gate, this specific gate to the digital world, has been sealed by Blackboard Greymon, but he's unaware of this. And he opens this gate, and him and Arukenimon and Mamimon and the Dark Spore children that are there, the other 19, because Noriko is not there. I'm assuming Cody and TK and the others kind of, like, explain to her parents of, okay, your kid was kidnapped, technically, and then she was implanted with this weird dark spore seed, and then it grew, and it made her smarter, and then the flower got taken from her, but the spore is still there, and now she's kind of really just weak and kind of, like, not quite here. But we're gonna find a way to fix her. Her parents going, what the frick happened? And TK and, Davis and his group get sucked into the portal, or they run into the portal that Oikawa opens, and then they end up in the dream world. And the kids kind of realize that this is not the digital world very quickly. And then Oikawa, well, at least he's not trying to eat his own foot this time. The dog will chew on his own foot. Hi. Want me to pet you? I pet you. Hey, pet you. You are pet. But what ends up happening is, the kids are actually very scared because this is not the digital world that they were promised. Plus, we see Mamimon and Arukenimon, fighting the Digidestined. And what Oikawa does is, this is when Oikawa then, it's revealed that Oikawa has kind of been possessed by / had his ear whispered into by Myotismon for the past, 3, 4, whatever many years it is. And, so then Myotismon reveals himself as, like, a clone of Oikawa. He then goes through and he sucks up all of the power from the Dark Spore children's flowers. And, he explains that the dark spores are just basically a way to have the dark flowers. And then, I drain the power from the flowers because it drains the power from the children. And this allows me to regain my power. And if the kids don't have the spores removed, or if they keep growing, they'll eventually turn into dark trees. And of course, Myotismon did not give a flying frick what happened to these kids once he already drained them of their power for the most part. He wouldn't care if they all died. In fact, it would probably be helpful to him to a degree. And what ends up happening is, the Digidestined get very scared because, Myotismon, he turns into Myotismon. And then we have the whole, the illusions and everything, and the Digimon getting, multiple Digimon all digivolving and, so many different things and everything. And, and then they get knocked into the digital world. And what ends up happening is it's revealed that each of the, the Dark Spore kids still have the power to, like, feed Myotismon because at one point, Davis and the others are trying to encourage the kids of, no, you have to keep, you can't keep, allowing the darkness to keep controlling you. You have to fight against it. You have to, you know, find ways to, look at the good in life and everything. And what ends up happening is, Cody and the others are trying to encourage the kids, but they're just like, what can we do to help? We're, the only thing special about us was that we fell for Myotismon's trick, that we fell for what we call his trick. And this just makes more darkness that then feeds Malamyotismon because they're still kind of connected to Malamyotismon. Pet the puppy. My baby. And off in the real world, Noriko and her parents are with Tai and the others back at the summer camp, along with like all the rest of the Digidestined families. And they're like, okay, we have to take her to the digital world so that way we can try to find a way to help her get rid of this dark spore. And Sora's kind of keeping an eye on her and everything. And they all get transported to the digital world when all of the other Digidestined from all over the world get transported there. And what ends up happening is, Noriko is still, very sad, and the other Digidestined, the Dark Spore children are still kind of, they're standing on the border between the digital world and the dream world, this like border wall that's there that has like cracks in it and everything. And, so it's just like, you can't keep, denying it. And they're like, well, what did you want to do when you grow up? What did you want to be when you grow up? And this is when David says, I wanted to be, I want to own a noodle cart and everything. And then this results in like the rest of the kids going, Noriko's like, well, I wanted to be a teacher. And Kiko, who's one of the other girls, is like, well, I wanted a bakery because I always loved the smell of fresh bread. And then like one of the other boys is like, I wanted to be a baseball player. And like the other one's like, I wanted to write comic books and everything. But so it's like we all had dreams, but we all gave up on them. And what ends up happening is they all climb over the jagged border. They come into the digital world, and every time that each of them kind of says what their dream was and like focuses on that, it makes Malamyotismon like slowly start disappearing. Like arm disappears, leg, torso. So he's just like a head on his shoulders or whatever, and they come into the digital world, and then on the ground in front of the group appears all of these different baby Digimon. And then the baby Digimon jump into their arms and everything, and then the Dark Spore children then pull away, their where they're touching the Digimon, their hand glows and they get a Digivice. And it's kind of implied, and this is what makes me think that anyone that goes to the digital world, within like a certain, I guess, age range or whatever, you go to the digital world, you will find a Digimon. A Digimon will either appear that is meant for you, or there is a Digimon already out there in the digital world that you need to find that is meant for you. In regards to like Tai and his group, their Digimon were kind of specially selected for them. Same thing with, Davis and his group to a degree. With these kids, there was a ton, there was these new baby Digimon that had probably just either hatched and whatever the case was, and now they're here. And now they each get to have their own Digimon. Some of them, one of them gets a Naokimon, one of them gets a Yukami Botemon, one of them gets a Poryomon, Noriko gets a Punimon, which is, I think hers is this little red adorable thing. Most baby Digimon are just adorable, regardless of what they turn into. You're adorable too. He was a Rockruff that evolved into a midday version of Lycanroc. Tell me he does not look like a Lycanroc. Am I wrong? Just camera. And, so all of the Dark Spore children now, are able to then help defeat Myotismon. They're able to, help power up Imperial Dramon fighter mode and, banish the darkness that was there. And then it's stated that, Ken says, as long as we, focus on our dreams and on our hopes, and as long as we keep our, remember the good and everything, and as long as we don't, succumb to the darkness again, the dark spores won't grow. They're kind of, inert and harmless. You can't remove them, but And it stated that one of the reasons why theirs would turn them into dark trees is because they're not a perfect copy of Ken's. Ken's didn't turn them into a dark tree, but the other kids, if they're left undrained or left to keep growing, it would turn them into dark trees. We don't see any evidence of this happening, but it could have just been either Malamayotisman talking out of his backside, or it was him, telling the truth. And so it was a rare time when Malamayotisman doesn't lie. Okay, then. And what ends up happening, maybe. And what ends up happening is, of course, Ken explains, as long as we keep focusing on our dreams and on, the good and everything, we should be fine. And this kind of goes along with where I kind of put like the dark ocean, and kind of goes off on the tangent of like the dark caves and everything that like Sora and Matt ended up in the original season. That like, these are different. I don't know if 100% of this is intentional, but I look at these as different representations of the way that depression works. And for anyone that's dealt with depression, I'm not saying that it boils down to this easily of an explainable thing by any means. I have dealt with small bits of depression. I have had family members that have dealt with depression. I have had, friends that have dealt with depression and still deal with depression. It's not something that goes away overnight. But in regards to, these certain things, it's like a way of reminding kids that, just, focus on the good in life. Keep going towards your dreams. Keep going towards, good things. Remember, the things in life that make you happy, your friends, your family, your books you like, whatever the case may be. And I look at the dark spores as a representation of, that darkness, that, that little bit of depression can still be inside of you. And sometimes it'll flare up, but if you keep, and I know it's not as simple as I'm saying it to be, it's not, but, as long as you keep your, you remember the good, you try to focus on the good, even if it's just a little at a time, sometimes you can, slowly work your way back out of the depression. And as I said, if you have depression, I wish you the best of luck in dealing with it. Don't do anything rash. Don't do anything horrible. Please don't. I understand the way that, don't do anything permanent in regards to going down the bad path. Don't do that. Please don't do that. But the dark spores are kind of, I think, of a way of representing, or at least in the way that I take it, their way of representing that there is still always this potential that darkness could come back. Hey, stop that. I'm almost done. The dark spores are a way of representing that, okay, this darkness, this sadness, this dark seed is still inside of you. And that, at times it may flare and grow and it may get bigger, and then like, you can, make it get smaller by, fighting your way through the depression, whether that involves, counseling or, medication that helps with that, or whatever the case may be. Friends, family, whatever the case is, pets. Hi, baby. That it can help you try to fight your way through that a little bit. And, and I'm sure that throughout the rest of these kids' lives, there are times where they do struggle with depression and struggle with that type of a thing of, living up to wanting to be these, digi-destined and everything. And there's some of the kids who probably ended up having, like, their, being put into coma later on by, Eosmon and Metawa. They're not specifically stated, and I don't remember if we see any of them specifically in the Neverworld, but since they're digi-destined, there's a good chance that they may have been some of the ones that were there. But, so as, time goes by and everything, they've probably dealt with things in the past, but they've probably also told their parents, and their parents probably did what they could to help them. And on top of that, hopefully they all still stayed in touch with each other and became friends, and, even had Ken there to help them with, different types of support, had the other Digi-Destin there to help with different types of support. The dog is in the background grooming himself. And just all these other support systems that were hopefully set up to help these kids, so that way the dark spores didn't grow, or if they did grow, that they were able to be kind of pruned here and there, like kept at bay. um Not as simple as it sounds, obviously, when it comes to if that is a metaphor for depression and that type of a thing, or kind of where I take it as a metaphor for depression. But that's just kind of what I see with that. So that's what we have for the dark spore children. I'm trying to figure out how to structure the video that would be about Oikawa, because there's Oikawa, and then there's Malamyotismon, and then there's Arukenimon and Mummymon, and then there's the then there's the Control Spire Digimon. So I think Mummymon and Arukenimon can get their own video, and then so can Malamyotismon for like the Digimon villains videos that I've done. And then Oikawa definitely will get his own video and everything, and talk about like his relationship with like Cody's dad and such. But then I also just want to go through and like talk about the different Control Spire Digimon at some point. So that's what we have for that. Plus I have like the Daemon cores I got to talk about at some point. And the Dark Ocean. So I still got plenty of stuff to talk about with Digimon. So plus Mako and Mekumon and Diego and Nish, and Diego and Maki, and then Menoa and everything that goes along with more of them down the line as other Digi-tested. So that's what we have for the Dark Spore children. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you are someone that does deal with depression, please make sure that you have people around you that will support you, whether that's friends or family or counselors or something along those lines. People that will support you and people that can help you, whether they're just there to help make sure that you're at least okay, that you're not going to do anything rash. And please don't ever do anything rash. I know what that feels like to lose someone to suicide, and I don't want to. And if I can prevent that happening to someone, then that would be just, I helped someone, so that's what we have there. So I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. I gotta go take the dog to the groomer. How could they make a choice? You're lying. They've been brainwashed. You made them all a bunch of false promises. You say they're going to become a superior being, and you don't even know what that means. A superior being is someone who cares for others.